Welcome to our channel, Million Dollars Made Easy. In this video, we want to look at the effects inflation can have on your nest egg. Well, look at what an average home value was in 1994. It was 132,000, and just 30 years later, at the end of 2024, the average house cost $419,200. That's an increase of 218%. We look at just goods and services of what they would cost you back in 1994. For comparison's sake, this 132,000 in 2024, those same goods and services would cost you 279,000. That's a 112% inflation rate. Now, the reason I want to show you this is to show you what the S&P 500 would have done over the last 30 years. If you would have put 132,000 in the S&P 500, with dividends 30 years later, you'd have 2,398,000. That's a 1,717% increase. That's why people recommend putting as much money as you can in the S&P 500 in the accumulation stage, because these are the kind of differences you can have. Even though inflation is affecting your buying power in these different items, home value and goods and services, look how much the S&P beats the inflation rate if you can just put your money in there. And I want to look at also one often used investment is gold. And this is going to be a 50-year. It's not a exact same comparison, but it'll give you an idea. Back in 1974, my job when I started working, my average wage was $13,343. When I retired in 2024, the average wage was $65,000. That's a 3.22% compound annual growth rate. The same goal, same situation. If I would have put $200 into gold back in 1974, it would have been worth 2,620 at the end of 2024. That's a 5.28% return. But on comparison's sake, the S&P 500 from this period, 1974 to 2024, that same $200 invested in the S&P 500 would be worth 40,128. That's a compound annual growth rate of 11.19%. That's for those 50-year period. We just look at the median, which is what we do on this channel. We use the returns for the S&P 500. We look for the last 100 years. The last 100 years, if you took $200 invested in the S&P 500 over a 50-year period, the median value for that 100-year period would be 31,000, which is a 10.65% return. And the absolute worst case scenario in the last 100 years, you put $200 in the S&P 500 and you had the worst 50-year run, you'd have 8,131, which is a 7.69% annual or compound annual growth rate. This is in the worst case scenario. The whole reason I'm pointing this out is I found this a couple of years ago. The average American retiree had 170,726. So I want to know, if I wanted to have this kind of money at the end of 2024, how much would I have needed to invest in each of these items? In gold, I would have had to invest $13,033 to end up with 170,000. That's 13 times what I would have paid in, the 13,000. But look at this, folks. If I use the S&P 500 for the same 50-year period, to go from here to here is 11.19% compounded annual growth rate. But if I would have invested just $851 in 1974, never added another dime, I would have had $170,726 at the end of 2024. That's 201 times this investment right here. That's for this period. The median would have been a little bit less. It would have been 158 times. I would have had to invest 1,083 for the median values for the last 100 years. And even in the worst case scenario in the last 100 years, using the S&P 500, if I would have invested $4,199 back in whatever year that was, I don't remember what it was, I would have had 170,726. That's 41 times. Look at the difference between gold and just investing in the S&P 500. Even looking at the worst case scenario, this is the median, and the actual 1974 to 2024, 200 times what I invested. I only would have been invested this kind of money to end up with this kind of money. I just wanted to show you the impact of inflation. You've got to plan for it, because you can see here everything's going to continue to go up. Well, we know what's happened to the home values. They've made a lot of people houses unaffordable because they just can't afford this kind of money. That's the effect of inflation. Yet, you put your money in the S&P 500 for the long term, you can have these kind of returns when inflation's having these kind of effect on their home values and goods and services. You can far outpace inflation. Folks, that's what we do on this channel. We love running numbers for people, and that's what we uh, love to do because we're all on a financial journey together. I make lots of different videos. We look at all kinds of different scenarios. We all want to have a comfortable retirement. And we especially don't want to work any longer than we need to, but we need to take into account inflation. We need to see our numbers worked out. That's what we do on this channel. So please consider subscribing. Check out some of the other videos where we look at some of these other issues. Please like the video and thanks so much for watching.